Welcome to Veterans Archives, where we honor our veterans by preserving their stories for future generations. If you believe these voices matter, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this channel so more people can hear the experiences of those who served. And if you or a veteran you know needs support or resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org. To learn more about our mission, watch additional veteran stories, or find out how to record a veteran story, please visit our website at www.veteransarchives.org. Together, we can ensure that every veteran story is remembered. Today is Sunday, March 8th, 2026. We're talking with Cedric Davis, who served in the United States Army. So, good morning, Cedric.
Good morning, Bill. How you doing?
Great, great. How about you?
I can't complain.
Well, that's good, and I appreciate you taking time out. I know today is pretty much your only day off, so
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for the interview. I appreciate it.
Excellent. So we will start out with our first question, and that really is when and where were you born?
I was born in Orange, New Jersey, August 20th, 1972.
Okay. Did you grow up in Orange, New Jersey then?
No, I was born in Orange, but I was raised in Newark till I was 6. And then
Okay.
my father and mother moved to Hillside, New Jersey, where I still currently reside in Hillside. Small town,
Okay. So you've always been a Jersey guy, though.
always, my entire life. Yeah.
Well, so talk to me a little bit about what it was like growing up.
Um, my parents have been together they've been married 53 years. They've been together since they were young, so maybe 60 years. So yeah, I come from a two parent household. Um, my father is from Newark, New Jersey. My mother was from the South.
Oh,
She relocated up here with my grandmother. I think when she was a little girl, and they moved to Newark, New Jersey. Um, I think my mother met my dad when she was 16, and they've been together that entire time.
that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So what did your dad do? Uh,
my father, he's retired now. He was a bus mechanic for
okay.
New Jersey Transit. That's
Okay.
where he retired. But my father did a lot of things to support his family. You know, he told me he delivered furniture um, with his father when he was young. My father's a Navy veteran. Um, he did a bunch of odds and ends, growing up in the 60s. And, when he was young, he said it was hard to get a job. But when he got with New Jersey Transit, I think he worked 30 years and retired. He's been retired maybe 11 years now, 12 years.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, when you're young and you got a family, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yep, yep. That's what he always said. He did whatever he had to do for his family.
Yeah. So, any brothers and sisters?
I have a younger brother and sisters, 3 of us.
Oh, okay. And where do you fit in there?
I'm the oldest. I'm
You're
the
the
oldest of the
oldest,
3.
so
Yeah,
you're in charge.
I would like to think so.
Do they let you believe that sometimes?
Um, you know what? They listen, but we're all strong minded, so
Yeah.
everyone pretty much does their own thing. They listen to me when it matters.
Well, that's good. That's good. My sister's the oldest, so she thinks she's in charge too. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, talk to me about what it was like going to school. Did you have a lot of friends? Did you play sports? Just kind of in general.
As a kid, I played Pop Warner football.
Hmm.
I played Pop Warner for years, and my father and mother, they were actively involved in the program that I can remember. My father would do whatever he had to do. He was a team parent, so they would help out. I wrestled in high school, so it was football and wrestling. I stopped playing football when I got to high school because I let someone tell me that I was too small because I was short.
Uh-huh.
I think I was 4 foot something. I was very small coming up. So I let
Yeah.
someone discourage me, and I was pretty average. I was a decent football player,
Uh-huh.
but I never played high school ball, but I wrestled in high school. I was in Army ROTC when I was in high school. I wasn't active in too many things. I didn't like care for school too much.
Okay. But you made it through.
Yeah, oh yeah, I made it through. I got decent grades, but
Oh, okay.
I didn't like it. I didn't care for school.
Was that an expectation though to get good grades as a kid? Like, is that something your parents were?
Yeah, they did. They
Yeah.
did. I was uh, above average student, and I don't remember ever really bringing my books home or doing any work. So I could only tell myself if only I applied myself, you know, where would I be? Because my brother is college educated, my sister is college educated. I'm the only one that I didn't want to go to college after high school.
Yeah. Well, I
No,
think we all take our own path though, right?
yeah, school wasn't my thing. I wanted to
Yeah.
go into the military.
So speaking of that, let's talk about ROTC. How was that for you, and how did that shape your future decision?
Um, I think I was in ROTC my freshman, sophomore, and junior year because I went in the Army on the delayed entry program the
Hmm.
summer of going into my senior year. And I didn't go into ROTC my senior year. In my mind, I was preparing myself to actually go into the service.
Okay.
So, you know, it taught, I was already disciplined, but it reinforced some of that discipline and structure.
Hmm.
You know, we used to go to Fort Dix, and it was there was an element of excitement. We would go to Fort Dix to the bases for trips and everything. Uh, I was on the drill team, and we did drilling ceremony. Um, we would, I enjoyed like the inspections. Our chief
Hmm.
warrant officer, he's long passed away, but he was chief warrant officer Sozio. I remember him vividly because he was a very positive force. You know, especially when I did tell him my ambitions were to go into the military. I knew that early on because I knew I wasn't going to school. I would have been wasting my parents' money.
Yeah. So was that what were some of the other driving factors? Like why the military? Because it sounds like pretty, like you said, pretty early on, you knew this is what you were going to do. What shaped that decision?
I like excitement,
Uh-huh.
you know, and the adrenaline, and you know, watching war movies, Rambo, Apocalypse Now. You know, my father used to say when I was a kid, and I remember it vividly. I used to always like to go outside and play war and all that stuff. So I knew early on that the military was a path that I was going to take. In my mind, it was going to be a career too. It didn't work out that way, but I was
Hmm.
joining the army to do 20 years. That was my initial goal, to go in and make a career out of it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and we kind of grew up in the era. I'm a little bit older than you, but we grew up in that era of be all you can be, right? And those
Exactly.
motivational
Yeah.
army.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I remember those days. So, did you sign up in delayed entry during high school, or did you sign up after high school?
During high school, I had to get
Okay.
my parents' permission.
Uh-huh.
They had to they had to sign a release. And my father, he was okay with it. I remember my mother wasn't. I remember having to talk with her and telling her, you know, whether you guys do it or I do it when I turn 18. I said, you know, this is what I want to do. So my mother reluctantly
Uh-huh.
gave her permission for me to go. I joined the summer of my junior year.
Okay.
With I left for the army 3 days after I graduated high school.
So you didn't even have like a senior summer then. You just left.
I didn't want it. My mother was like, you know, stay for the summer, stay for the summer. I was like, no, I wanna go. You know,
Oh yeah.
I wanted I wanted excitement. I wanted to get out on my own. I wanted to get out of Hillside. I wanted to
Hmm.
experience life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and good for you for realizing that college wasn't in the cards because I graduated high school and of course everyone pushes you to. I went to college and failed miserably,
yeah,
and
I
then
knew
and then went in the military.
I would have.
Yeah.
I,
So where did you go to basic training then?
I went to basic training, Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay.
Short bus ride from where I live.
Yeah. So you are a Jersey guy through and through then, because you really
Mhm.
never,
Yes, I
never
was.
really left. So talk to me about arriving at basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Um, the night I left, we stayed in a hotel.
Hmm.
We stayed in a hotel right next to it was next to a club. I forget that whether the club was Club 88. It was a club back in the day that was everybody went to. So I was
Uh-huh.
going to that club that night. Never been to a club before. Uh, didn't go out. Wasn't much for going out. But the people that were leaving the same night, they was like, "Oh, let's go out." So I went out to the club and I realized I was like, "Oh, this is not my thing." I stayed because I said, "Who knows the next time I'm going to have free time to be able to do anything." So I had a good time that night. That morning, my recruiter, I still remember his name, Staff Sergeant Marquez, was my recruiter. He came and he picked us up. We all went to breakfast. Um, they loaded us onto a bus and we headed to Fort Dix. We got to Fort Dix during the day. And I remember, you have your 0 week.
Right.
We got there 0 week, we got processed in. And I remember, getting haircuts, getting issued your uniforms and everything was cool. So I'm saying to myself, oh man, this is not going to be so bad. After about, I think, 4 days or 5 days of 0 week, they loaded us onto a bus. And I remember us driving not a short distance from where the reception area was. And there was these 5 drill sergeants standing outside. And as the bus, I remember the bus stopping and the double doors lined perfectly with the first drill sergeant that was standing in the line. And I remember his name. He was Senior Drill Sergeant Rivera. I'll never forget, because when he got on, like the look on his face, my heart sunk. And this is the '90s. It's still cursing at you, you know,
Oh yeah.
putting their hands on you,
Saying bad things about your mom.
saying bad things. Yep, saying bad things about your mom and everything. And when he got on, and just the sheer intensity that he engaged us in, right there, I said, "Oh man, I messed up." I said, "I messed up." So they're shuffling us off the bus. I got my duffel bag. I got my little bag with all my personal stuff that I brought with me. And we're getting off the bus and they're pushing us off the bus and they're shoving us and everything. We get off of the bus. I line up on these yellow lines. And by this time, I'm saying to myself, I should have went to school. Should have went
Yeah.
to, should have went to school. But it was too late. It was
Right.
that first night I remember, they in processed us. We got into the barracks. I think that was it for the night. The adventure began that next morning at 0400.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. What's happening at 0400 at Fort Dix?
Um, the first morning, I remember them coming in, with the garbage cans and beating on the garbage cans, waking everybody up, tipping bunks over,
Wow.
tipping bunks over. And I'm saying to myself again, I'm like, oh man, I'm messed up. They're yelling at you. Someone's in your face. You got two people on either side of you and they're barking contradictory orders. One
Uh-huh.
in one thing, you don't know what to answer. And I remember, as all this stuff is coming back, I remember looking at the drill sergeant and he was, what the F are you looking at me for? Don't look at me private. And I'm
Yeah.
looking down, and then the other one saying, "Oh, you don't like the way he looks." So it was just, it was a sensory overload
Right.
that first day, and it just went from bad to, I think, worse. Because when I was underweight when I
Hmm.
when I do my senior year. I forget. I think I had to gain 20 pounds. I think I wound up gaining 30 because all I did was eat. You know, not much running or preparation, so I wasn't physically ready at all. That I remember.
Yeah.
So I went in overweight, so I was all types of fat body and, can I say fat ass and everything. So I remember being put on they put me on a diet. I couldn't have juice,
Uh-huh.
I have water. I couldn't have cake. I couldn't have any of that. And I was all kinds of fat names.
Right. Right.
So
Well, and for
it was
people listening too, I don't mean to interrupt. For people listening too, like when you're in basic training, meals are like a big part of your day. And
Yeah.
they actually had some pretty good desserts and stuff. So to not be able to participate in that must have sucked.
I spent so much time nervous that first, I would say 2 to 3 weeks.
Hmm.
I don't remember ever even caring. I just,
Yeah,
they told me to eat. I remember, trying to sneak a couple of times, getting caught, getting in trouble, but then I realized it wasn't worth it.
right.
And then in basic, my family used to send, I used to get things all the time. My aunt used to always send me cookies. And I had to write a letter to her and tell her, stop sending cookies, because every time those cookies came, they would really dog me out. Give
Yeah,
all the cookies away. I can't remember having really any of the cookies that she would ever bake to send me, because they would eat them in front of me. The drill sergeants would open up the box and pass the box around. I would never get any because I was overweight.
right.
So
Yeah.
if my aunt was here, my aunt would tell you. And I probably still have the letter. I have every letter that was ever wrote to me in the military. I keep everything. I'm like a pack rat.
Uh-huh.
So I remember writing her a letter telling her, don't send me anything edible, nothing. I said, they're on me. I said, and I can't take it. So it wasn't overtly difficult, but it was hard. It was the 90s. Yeah,
Right.
we was still putting a nice tough product was coming off the assembly line with the
Yeah,
army.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you get through that first 3 weeks, then things start to kind of settle out for you.
Yeah, started losing weight,
Uh-huh.
getting in better shape. I could do pull-ups and sit-ups. I remember calling my dad, I think around week 3 or week 4, the build up for the Gulf War started.
Right.
And I called my dad and I told my father, I said, Dad, I think, I had never called him because I was having my doubts during that time. I said, Pop, I think I messed up. I said, building up for this war. And I said, I didn't join for this. And my father told me, he said, man, he said, I tried to tell you, but you didn't want to listen. He said, get off my phone. He said, don't call me with this nonsense no more. He said, you got to man up. And he hung up the phone on me.
Wow.
So after that, I got in my mind, I said, I got to man up and embrace this life that I chose for myself. And after that, I did. My father wasn't against me going into the military, but he wanted me to do something else. So I was, hell bent on that life. So when I finally got it and I called him with that nonsense, my father was one for nipping it in the butt. You say you're going to do something, you do it. My father was big on keeping your word, being
Hmm.
responsible. And he said, you swore an oath. So now you got to see it through. He said, don't call here with this no more.
Good
And
for your dad. Good for your dad. And good for you.
yeah, he doesn't remember when I tell him that. He said, I don't remember doing that. My dad's almost 80 years old now.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't remember some of that stuff I say, but yep. And I never called after that with any more woe is me stories, because I knew maybe my mom would have listened to him, but I knew he wasn't.
Right.
So my father was in the Navy during Vietnam. So he was in the military during a tougher era than what I was in. What we served through.
Right.
So
Right.
so yeah, after that, I didn't call with sob stories. Anytime I called, I just called with progression. I would call when we got off the range, or you know if we went out to the field or road march. I got more excited about it
Hmm.
once I accepted, and got used to military life, because it was an adjustment.
Yeah, a little bit of a culture shock, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
it was. Yep. I've always had structure and discipline, but it was like a structure and discipline on steroids.
It was a whole different ball game, right?
Yeah, it was. But once I got used to it, I started to love it.
So when you think about basic training, now, what are a couple of things that really stick out in your mind? I mean, other than the pep talk that your dad gave you, what are some things that you really think about when you think about basic training?
What I really think about the most is what it did for me mentally. You know, I don't know how it is now, but they really like would tear down who you were and then rebuild you in a different image. And I know that was significant because I still carry that today
Mm-hmm.
in my life. It was to a point to where I had to tone down on some of that, and I've just most recently over the past 5 years done that because I realized that was kind of being like a detriment more than a help.
Yeah.
So and I didn't realize it. You think you're always doing everything right as a man or as a father until you realize that you're not.
Absolutely.
So I had to tone down some of it. But I remember one particular day they were being nice, not cursing and not fussing and not pushing or shoving or yelling at us. And we actually had time to sit down and eat chow. And this particular day, it was decent chow. I can't remember the meals. We scarfed them down so fast, but it was breakfast, and I pretty eggs, bacon, orange juice, and no one was yelling at me, or screaming. But we had our gas mask with us this day, but it wasn't registering what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So after chow, after breakfast, we went on a light leisurely road march, and as we're road marching, we're walking up to this building with all of this white smoke coming out of this chimney. So we're all wondering where we're going. We're kind of like light talking in formation. It wasn't strict or anything. We were walking up to the gas chamber. So we were going to
Oh,
the gas
nice.
chamber, and then they turned it back on us.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember there was in my company, I believe maybe 50 of us. We went in first. So I was in the back. I was the last stack of 10. So I got to watch the other 40 people in front of me take off their mask and attempt to give their serial number, name, and rank. And I'm watching, no one can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying, oh, this gas is already burning my exposed skin, my hands and my neck. So I'm feeling the burn, and I'm watching people throw up, and I'm watching people take that first initial breath to try to get their serial number out and getting choked up. So they're doing one at a time. So it seemed like forever before they got to mine. So I remember when they got to me, I took a deep breath in my mask and pulled my mask off. And when I opened up my mouth to try to utter it without taking a breath, for some reason I couldn't. And I took that first deep breath of that CS gas, and I felt it just fill my lungs and my esophagus, and I couldn't get anything out. And by this
Yeah.
time that they're yelling, and I'm trying, I remember this vividly. I'm trying my best to get my serial number, my name, rank, so I can get out of there because I had nine, there was nine other people after.
Yeah.
And we finally got to it. And when they let us out, there was a double door. We ran out to the door and they told us to flap our arms and run around this track. And as I'm running around the track, there's people laid out everywhere, throwing up, snot bubbles. I had upchucked all of that breakfast. And then it realized they did this on purpose.
Yeah.
So I threw up. I think I made it halfway around the track before I finally collapsed out there because I could, you couldn't breathe. And
Right.
they walked us back, all nasty and snotted up and mucked up. And I remember I believe it was a Sunday, and they gave us the rest of the day, I guess, to recover from that. That was a distinctive day. And then, I always loved the time on the range,
Uh-huh.
because up until that point, I had never fired a weapon or even been around one. So, the Army introduced me to, a lot of fun and exciting things. I used to love the range.
Yeah. Range days were always a blast, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and just learning how to be a soldier,
Uh-huh.
and leaving that civilian part of myself behind.
So you make it through boot camp. Did your family come to your graduation then?
My family came and picked me up.
Uh-huh.
They allowed me to go home for
Oh,
about 8 hours. From Fort Dix, I think we were about an hour and 20 minutes from Fort
uh-huh.
Dix. So my mom and dad, they came and picked me up in my BDUs. I was in my BDUs. I came home. My brother was a big time football player. So he didn't come. He had practice or something. And I knew my brother was serious about his football. So when I got
Mhm.
home, he must have just been getting in from practice. So he damn near collapsed when he saw me because it's been over 2 months I haven't been home and I'm a different person now. I'm skinny. I think I may have slimmed down from I think I lost 40 pounds, 40,
Uh-huh.
45 pounds. I lost a lot of weight. So yeah, I don't think I was recognizable when I look at some of the photos now. I was just slim, clean faced kid.
Yeah.
I went home for about 8 hours and I took that time to spend time with my family and go see a few of my friends. And they took me back, and I graduated that next day from basic training.
Okay.
And
Now, I got to ask, in that 8 hours of being home, did you get to have any of your aunt's cookies?
no, no, I
Oh,
don't remember. I don't even think I saw my aunt. I was home for maybe an hour or so, and then I was
okay.
I started making my runs to see people because I knew it would be a while before I would see anybody again.
Right.
So I
Right.
took that opportunity to just visit and go see some of my friends.
Yeah. So then you get back to base and it's next day's graduation.
Yeah.
What happens after graduation?
After graduation, a bunch of my aunt, my uncle, some of my close friends who are like family, they came to my graduation, graduated, and they loaded us onto a bus. I think maybe I spent maybe 20 or 30 minutes with my family, and they
Hmm.
loaded us on a bus, and we were heading to the airport so I could go to AIT.
And what was your MOS?
I was a 16 Sierra, man portable air defense crew member. But I was a Stinger gunner,
Okay.
Stinger missiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did. I joined the army. I wanted to be an 11 Bravo, but I didn't score high enough on the ASFAB, and I didn't want to take the ASFAB again.
Uh-huh.
And I forget what other jobs opened up, but I think I had armor, air defense. It was a few other things, trucking. So that was the closest thing. And it looked really interesting from what they showed me, launching missiles, shoot down airplanes. And we we could also use the missile to blow up lightly
Hmm.
armored vehicles or light vehicles. So I thought that was exciting. I said, oh, that'll get me close to, you know, being on the ground and doing,
Yeah.
exciting stuff. So I chose that MOS.
Okay. So you get on a plane and where does that take you then? Where do you
We
go for your
went to Fort Bliss, Texas.
Okay.
Fort Hood is where
Yeah.
I took my AIT.
So tell me a little bit about AIT and what happens while you're there.
Um, when when I think about AIT, I don't really have much of a memory,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know why. I don't have I have like certain things because when you interview Johnnikins and I was listening to his, I was like, wow, we did do that. Like
Yeah.
he brought to my attention that we even went to AIT together, and I don't know. I had to really think and really go back and say, yeah, we sure did because we just came off of a cruise
Hmm.
and we went to a veterans meet and greet. And we got to meet all of these veterans from all these different eras of Korean War, of a bunch of Vietnam guys, and a couple of guys from the Global War on Terror was on these cruises. And we were all going around talking, and he's like, "Yeah, with these guys, we went to AIT together." And I was like, "We went to AIT together?" And he was like, "Yeah, you don't remember that?" And I really had to think, and I said, "Yo, you're right." So I don't know. I don't think AIT was really that eventful. I remember
Yeah.
we used to sneak off posts. We used to go to Mexico. We used to go to Juarez,
Uh-huh.
Mexico. We snuck off post one day and got tattoos. We used to climb the fence and sleep
Yeah.
in base. And we went and got tattoos one day, but the training, I really don't recall. I know we had to get confidential or secret clearances, and they had to do background checks. I remember that.
Hmm.
Because what we did, we couldn't tell how far the missile went and disclose what the actual missile's capability was, and the training facility was secret. Well, how we trained. So,
Right.
we had to have a clearance for some of that. But other than that, remembering everything, I have a very short memory of my time at Fort Hood.
Yeah. Well, I think AIT can just be a blur anyway because it's just that's kind of a blip on the radar. You're just coming off a boot camp, which was traumatic,
Yeah.
and you're a little bit more relaxed here. It's funny you talk about going to Mexico and doing things like that because my time in the military, I remember anytime they told us not to go somewhere, that's exactly where we went.
Yeah, yeah. And we weren't supposed to. They were warned against it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we went anyway.
Right.
We were all together. Everybody's in good shape. Everybody can handle themselves. We didn't think anything would happen to us, and nothing ever did. It was a simpler time too.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. But AIT went fast.
Uh-huh. And then what did you do after AIT?
After AIT, I went to Fort Benning for airborne school.
Okay.
I got airborne. I tried to get air assault, but they gave me airborne. But I tried to get air assault and airborne in my contract. I was only able to get one. So after Fort Bliss, I went to Fort Benning for airborne school.
Uh-huh.
And that I remember from the day I walked in there to the day I walked out. That was the most exciting time in my training, was doing that.
Right. Yeah. And now how long was airborne school at
It
that
was
time?
4 weeks, 3 weeks, and then jump week.
Okay.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
0 week, week one, ground week two was tower week, and week 4 was jump week.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember my time in airborne school. I would never do it again. I would never jump out of a plane, but if I did, I remember everything.
Uh-huh.
Everything.
Yeah. That's got to be exciting, right?
Yep, yep. That was my most profound military moment. Was going to
Yeah.
airborne school. Yeah.
What was it like the first time you made the actual jump, though? How'd you feel about that?
I was scared to death.
Yeah.
I was actually second man out the door, my first jump. So I'm standing behind the person and I can see everything. And in my mind, I'm saying to myself, I was excited, but I was scared. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. But if I didn't do it, I wasn't getting my wings because they would have put you out. You would have got kicked
Right.
out. So I knew there was only one way to my wings, and it was out that door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
A refusal at the door get you kicked out the
get you
first
kicked
time.
out. Get you kicked out.
Yeah.
And we saw it happen. We saw it happen to where people, soldiers wouldn't jump.
Yeah.
I did a jump and a guy's static line didn't release him from the plane and they had to jump the entire plane and then cut him free. I think that
Wow.
that was maybe my third jump.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my third jump. I remember the guy's face as I went past him when I exited the plane because I looked to see what he was doing as I was tucked in my L position. I remember his
Uh-huh.
face. He was an infantryman, so they had to cut him, and he had to pull his reserve chute. And I remember they cleared the plane, they jumped the entire plane, circled around the drop zone, and then he was the only one. And he pulled it. I guess as soon as he was able to clear, I forget how many seconds you had to count. I think 3 or 4 seconds, and he pulled his reserve and he landed safely. He was a stud. I don't remember his name. I remember his face, but everybody was on him the rest of jump week because I don't think we didn't have anybody else have a situation where they had to cut them from the plane.
Right. I can't imagine watching that happen and then knowing that I got to jump. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep. After the first First time, I was scared each and every time, but it got easier, every time. I just have airborne school under my belt. I had 5 jumps.
Right.
I tell Birch all the time, it's like 5 more than you.
That's all that matters, right?
They used to make fun of me. They say, "Oh, you just got 5 jumps." I said, "I had 5 more than you."
Right.
You know,
Right.
just airborne school. But airborne school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's no joke. That's an accomplishment.
yeah. One, and it's something that not a lot of people get to do in the military.
Right.
So I'm with a select few to ever do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So after airborne school, where do you go to from there?
After airborne school, I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, 4th Mechanized Infantry Division.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
where
right.
I met back up with Johnnikins. We all went to the same place.
Yeah, you, Johnnikins, and Birch, right?
Well, I met Birch at
Uh-huh.
Carson,
Okay.
but me, Johnnikins, and a buddy of mine, Carl Hickerson, we all went to AIT together, and we all got stationed at Carson together.
Okay.
So I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, and that's where I did my entire tour there.
Uh-huh. So talk to me about what it was like being at Fort Carson, some of the things you did there.
Um, First, you had to acclimate to the rise in altitude. So when I first got there, I used to suffer from headaches and nosebleeds because I think they gave us maybe a month or so to acclimate to the altitude because it was rough. I found it hard. I remember finding it hard to breathe, or really any like overexertion. I was extremely tired that first 2 or 3 weeks on runs or doing anything.
Right.
So that acclimation was pretty. It was pretty rough. But once I acclimated, things started to get a little bit smoother because we would run 3, 4 miles, a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was hard when you're sucking wind when you first get there. And then just again, I'm in the army during the time, falling out of runs and all that stuff. That was unacceptable.
Yeah.
That was stuff that was frowned upon. So that first few weeks at Carson acclimating, it was tough. But once I did, things got easier as far as that was concerned, as far as the physical part of it was concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so while you're there, like you spent your time at Carson. What was like a typical day there?
I got to Carson, I was a private. So I was assigned to a Vulcan platoon, the M113 with the Vulcan cannon.
Uh-huh.
So I was a Stinger gunner on a Vulcan. It was a 4-man tank. You had the driver, the gunner, the team chief, and then me as the gunner. I would shoot the missiles. They would drop the ramp. I would jump out and provide low to medium range air defense
Mm-hmm.
or the vehicle or whoever we were supporting. Because in our unit, we didn't deploy as a platoon. We would get sectioned off to other units. So say, the first time, my first, I guess, year, I think I was in a Vulcan platoon. We would go with armor or cav or field artillery and provide air defense for them. So we wouldn't see, people in our platoon or our section for weeks at a time. We
Okay.
we would get embedded in different units. So I thought that was exciting. I just did what I was told. Our section chief, he would tell me where to go. I would just do it. He,
Uh-huh.
he taught me how to be a Stinger gunner from an armored vehicle, and the best places to provide air defense for whoever it was we were providing it for.
Mm-hmm.
And I just absorbed everything. You know, and I'm a private. You can't say much anyway.
Right, right. All you can do is absorb. You're a sponge at this point.
I would just absorb everything because I took being a soldier. I took it serious.
Right.
You know, so I just tried to learn as much as I can. I think I was a gunner on a Vulcan for maybe a year. I believe, if I can remember correctly. And during that time, we went to NTC, the National Training Center. This was when the Army was gearing away from fighting in Europe to turning the fight to the Middle East.
Yes.
So we would go
I
to
remember those days.
Yeah, we would go to NTC, and I remember we painted all our vehicles from the camouflage green to tan. You know, we did a lot of that stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, so and by this time, the buildup was almost complete, and the invasion of Iraq was about to start.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, we were getting training to get ready, and I don't know, I don't remember if I think we were told that we were gonna be deployed if North Korea tried to do anything to South Korea, but we were getting ready to deploy somewhere, and the war, you know, after 100 hours was over. And I remember
Right.
being in formation. I think I was 18 years old, and we were all looking at each other because we were disappointed. You know, you're young, you don't know any better.
Right.
You want to see if this training is going to work. And I remember, I think me and Birch, we were talking about it the other day, that we remember standing in formation when George Bush announced that the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
Or Senior Bush, if that's George. But yeah, that the war was over, and I was kind of disappointed. In hindsight, you know, the Lord spared all of us, you know, all of that. But when you're young, you're not thinking straight.
Right. Well, and I mean, you're still looking for that excitement, right? That they promised, all that stuff. Yeah. So I got to ask, did you ever get to like actually fire the Stinger and blow some stuff up?
Yep, I did.
Okay.
I fired a Vietnam era red eye missile. I fired um, a Stinger missile,
Hmm.
and I was a team chief. And my gunners, I had two gunners. The when I became a junior NCO, I had two gunners, and we got selected where they fired the Stinger missile. So I was able to fire one, two, and I was team chief for gunners who got a chance to do it.
Oh,
And
that's
it,
cool.
it was it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have video clip. I have newspaper clippings because I remember there was a local Colorado news agency there, and a picture of actual the missile leaving the tube. I don't think it wasn't me; it was another team. But just having that clipping
Yeah.
was just extraordinary in itself. Even though when I look at it now, we never would have got an opportunity to shoot anything down because we've always had air supremacy everywhere we go.
Right. Right. But you never know.
Yeah,
You never
yeah.
know. So how long were you at Carson then?
I was at Carson my entire tour. I
Okay.
spent 3 years at Carson. 2 years.
Okay.
2 years at Carson. You know,
Yeah. So,
I would go to other bases because I drove for a colonel at one point.
mhm.
Then I went to a Stinger team. I was a gunner on a two-man Stinger team for a while. Then I was a lieutenant's driver for the Stinger platoon, which I hated. And then finally I got a call to get my own team. And I did that for my final year. I was a team chief, and I had two gunners my last year in the Army.
Yeah.
And my second gunner, his name was Sean Rogers, PFC Rogers. We went on to become the best team in the battalion. One of our training, we were attached to an infantry unit. 1st Battalion, 12th Infantry. And
Mhm.
that captain really thought that we were a nice little high-speed air defense team, and he requested us every time they went training. So my last year, me and him, we were never in garrison because they were always out training. But I got to do my last year, I got to do a lot of fun stuff being a part of this infantry unit.
Oh yeah, they're always doing something.
Yep, they were always doing something. We would we would ruck in 6 miles, or you know, because from what I remember, the armored vehicles would get them to a certain point, and then they would dismount
Mhm.
and walk or ruck the rest of the way in. So we got to do a lot of that stuff my final year. So that was the closest, and perhaps my last year was the best year in the Army, was doing that type of stuff. We
Yeah.
got to watch them breach. They would let us. They trained us too, so got to learn a little bit of their tactics, and we even cross trained, some of their guys on getting them familiar with certain aspects of the missile. We couldn't show them how everything with it, but if something happened to me or him, at least someone would roughly or relatively be able to fire the missile, because we would carry 6 missiles with us.
Mhm.
We would have to dismount. I would have a missile, my gunner would have a missile, and then they would have to pick 4 infantrymen to carry the other 4. And those missiles were 30, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds. It was a
Mhm.
lot of weight. On top of the weight, those guys was already carrying.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They don't travel light.
Nope, nope. And we traveled lighter than them. I don't know. I think maybe I would have a 40 or 45, 50-pound rucksack.
Mhm.
Theirs would maybe have another 10 or 20 pounds in it. But yeah, that was the exciting time. To go into NTC. There was a place we used to go in Colorado called Pinyon Canyon, that we would go for extreme cold weather training, which I hated because it would be, I remember one time it 20 below,
Oh
20
yeah.
below. Yeah, it was freezing cold. I don't like the cold now because of that.
Yeah, that's that kind of cold that gets right into your bones.
Yes, it does. Yep, it
Yeah.
surely does.
So, what year did you end up getting out of the military then?
I
Um,
got out the summer of 93,
okay.
and I went into the reserves.
Okay.
I went into the reserve. I think I was in the reserves for a year. I um, got attached to an MP unit in Orangeburg, New York,
Uh-huh.
and I did that for about a year. But coming from active to that, I didn't care for it.
Mhm.
Going from doing something every day to reporting for drill and then sitting around. I think I did it for about 6 or 7 months. One, I was driving an hour, 2 hours to get there, sitting around all day, and then I would have to turn around and drive all the way back home. So after about 6 months, I said, "No, I didn't want to do that." After I went into the inactive reserve, 2 months later, that unit got activated and they went to Bosnia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And they didn't call you.
I dodged another bullet. No, I
Yeah.
dodged another one.
Yeah.
That
So I wanted to ask, you spent for roughly almost 5 years in uniform. When you finally like hung up the uniform, what was it like, putting the uniform on for the very last time and knowing that you were going to be done?
I really don't remember. I don't remember feeling any way about it. I don't
Yeah.
think. No.
And it was a different transition too, right? Because you didn't leave active duty. You kind of left active duty and then went to the reserves and then
I went
sort of,
to the reserves. Yeah, I got out and found a job.
uh-huh.
Um, when I got out of the army, I think I took a couple of months off.
Yeah.
Couple of months, just to gather myself and just readjust to civilian life. And then I started looking for a job. And with my background, I'm trying to find security jobs. And I
Right.
remember my mom taking me to these interviews, and I was overqualified for every security job that I tried to apply for. And I was like, I would be the best candidate, to watch your front door. I'm just getting out of the military. So I couldn't land a job. And finally, a friend of mine um, took my information for FedEx. And within 2 weeks, I started working. I started working at FedEx, where I spent almost 20 years there.
Oh, gosh.
And I remember filling out my application because this is during the day you had to physically go in and put in applications and sit
Oh,
down
yeah.
and be interviewed. And I remember there were about two or three people in front of me, and they're taking their applications. Okay, we'll get back in touch with you. We'll get back in touch with you. So I'm saying, oh, they're just going to take my application. I'm never going to hear from them again. I remember the interviewer take my application and got to the part where I was in the military, and they said, well, can you come back for a second interview? I said, oh, sure, I'll come back for a second interview. Within a week, I was at Newark Airport working at FedEx. And by this time, all of the weight I had gained, maybe 35 pounds.
Yeah.
I'd been out of the Army for maybe 6 months, and I had put on all of this weight. And FedEx took that weight off me within 6 months because I
Whole
started out
different, whole different kind of boot camp,
a
right?
whole different kind of boot camp. I started out unloading boxes. They would take the containers off of the plane, bring it to an unload area, and I did that every day for I think maybe 4 or 5 hours a day,
Mhm.
with maybe 10 minutes break between flights. And I wound up shedding all of that weight that I had gained because I went from being very active to not being active at all,
Right.
to going back to being active again. And then I would go to my drills on, I forget what 2 weekends. I never made it to the 2 weekends, the weekend, a month, or whatever that was, but I would go to my drills and work. And I moved back home with my family. I
Hmm.
was living with my parents. At that time, my brother was away in college, and it was just me and my sister home with my parents. So I just started my life and working, and I would travel. I would go back and forth to Carson, and I kept in touch with a lot of those guys, and we still keep in touch. But it's only, four of my buddies that we do stuff. Birch, Johnnikins, and Hickerson. We travel, and once a year
Yeah.
we get together and just have fun and relive the old days and enjoy life now.
Yeah. Well, you have to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So in all that time, did you get married?
I've just got married. I got
Oh,
I got married a year. I've been married over a year.
well, congratulations.
Yeah, y'all. Thank you. Best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
But when I was young, I wanted to, but it just really like it never worked out. And then you know how you give up on certain things,
Right.
because I made a bunch of bad decisions with these women. But my wife came along, and a good woman changes things in a man's life, and she's been instrumental in a lot of my good fortune these past since I've been with her. We've been together now 11 years. So a lot of my good fortune now is because of her.
Right.
You know,
Right. And well, how did you meet?
we met at my current job where I work at now. We met.
Okay.
We were friends. We were friends for about of the 11 years. We were friends for about 5 years. We were friends.
Uh-huh.
And when the opportunity came for me to, and I had already always liked her, and when that opportunity came, I just went out on a limb, and she felt the same way about me, and we've been together ever since.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So, I'm curious. A lot of guys, when they get out of the military, bounce around a little bit, but you landed that job at FedEx and
yeah.
stayed there for 20 years. Were there things that you learned in the military that helped you in that civilian career?
It did. The owner of FedEx, Fred Smith, he was in the Marine Corps. I believe
Mhm.
he was a Marine Corps aviator. So FedEx is structured like the military.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so when I started working there, it was like a real simple transition for me. It wasn't hard
Mhm.
because I couldn't just go to my director. I had to. They had FedEx had a chain of command. FedEx operated in military time. We operated with deadlines and when we had to have packages delivered and packages picked up. So I was used to that.
Mhm.
So it became that was easy. FedEx was a joy until it wasn't. I've been going for there. I've been at the job that I'm at now. I'm going into my 15th year at
Right.
the Newark Housing Authority, and I left FedEx, because the culture started to change.
Mhm.
When I first started working for FedEx, it was really, and FedEx had it's called PSP, People Service Profit. And FedEx would actually put the people before service and profit. And when it started to change and they started to buy all of these trucking companies, I saw like the writing was on the wall, doubling out workloads, but you had the same time to do it. I couldn't keep up anymore.
Right. Right.
So, I started looking for something else, and I wound up with this job that started me off paying more money and everything because when my second son was born, I was a courier for FedEx working in Midtown Manhattan, Rockefeller Center. I spent 16 years,
Mhm.
16 tree lightings, 16 ball drops. I've been there for all of it. 9/11, I was in Manhattan, 9/11. I saw the horrors of that day firsthand. And um, FedEx was just a structured place till they started getting away from what made the company successful, and that was the people.
Right.
And after doing that for so many years, you start to slow down. I'm still a young man, but you know, I had 60 stops. Now you got 100 stops, 120 stops, and you still got 6.5 hours, 7 hours to do it in. And it just started to become too much.
Yeah.
So I went out on a limb. I remember having a conversation with my brother, afraid to leave. By this time I have children. I'm taking care of my kids, and I was afraid to make a that next step.
Mhm.
But I was pushed to a point to where I didn't have any choice, and I started working where I am now, which is an adventure all in itself. Because if I would have known what I know now about where I'm at, I probably would have stayed at FedEx and got that last 5 years and retired and then did something else.
Right. Right.
But shoot, I can't say that honestly because I wouldn't have my wife if I did that. But
Right. Yeah, everything happens for a
yeah,
reason, I think. Yeah.
yeah. But
So you
this
just
job I'm at now is a crazy, crazy journey I'm on from day to day.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll bet. So
yeah.
you have how many children?
I have three boys, and I
Oh
don't have
gosh.
any more. Yeah, a 27-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 17-year-old about to graduate high school.
Wow.
Yep, yep.
Well,
I'm
good for
almost
you.
done.
Yep, they're almost all off the payroll, as we
Yeah,
say.
yeah. But no, they're still on the payroll.
That never changes, does it?
Nope, nope. We're still on my parents' payroll. I tell my dad, say, my father always telling us, man, when you guys gonna do for you? Go there, we eat. He's like, when you guys gonna do for yourself? Never. So it never stops.
Right, right. That's why we're parents, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, you've done quite a bit and you've lived a really good full life so far. You got a lot of years left in you, I think.
Yeah, I hope
Um,
so. Yep.
you've got a family, you've had some adventures and all of those things. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about?
Um, hmm, there is so much.
Yeah.
You know, my family life has been, my parents, my brother, my sister, now my wife and my friends have also played an important part too in the man that I am currently.
Hmm.
Because my family has always been there, supported me even when I was having three kids, and I have two women that I have children with. So it was hard for me. My oldest son, I've had my oldest son since he was 2 years old.
Hmm.
His mom lives in another state. So, I've had him, and then my other two boys, you know, me and their mom weren't together. We've raised them together, but it was difficult for me not having, a ton of money back then, and being the one who provided a lot of the financial means. My
Hmm.
family really came in and like supported me and helped me through some of those times, because those times were hard. I didn't make a lot of money at FedEx. FedEx was fun, but when I look back, I'm like, yeah, I spent all that time there, and I really couldn't take care of myself, which
Yeah.
is another reason why I left. And that financial burden weighed heavy on me, because you want to do the best that you can for your family, and then when you can't, it takes a toll. But my family has always been there, and even now, I'm in a really good place, in a really good position. I still have the support of my family.
Hmm.
The support of having a wonderful wife, and then I have really good friends. Not just the ones I speak of from the army, but at FedEx. I spent, whereas me and Birch, we're thick as thieves, Johnnikins, we're all close, and Q, and we spent 2 years together. I have my FedEx family that I spent 20 years with,
Hmm.
that has, been very supportive of me, and always there. So, I'm blessed in many ways, because I really could have been out there struggling, trying to be the best father I could be, and I had a ton of help, because the good boys that I have, they work, and no trouble, don't give me any trouble, they don't get in any trouble, and I didn't do all that by myself.
Right.
I had a lot of help. So I wanted to express, how important my family has been, how important my wife is, because at the end of the day, she just left out of here to go to church. A lot of where I am now is because of that woman. So, and my dad, how have seen him with my mom over the past 53 years. You know, that's what I always wanted, and I thought that I would never achieve, and I have it. So, took me, 50 some odd years to get it, but I finally got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
here you are.
yeah, I got me a companion, a soulmate, a love mate, everything. She helped me get my finances back together. Because
Hmm.
I tell my sons now, they're young, and I tell them all the time, don't worry about, women so much. Women will come. I always tell them to worry about getting themselves in a position to where they don't have to work as hard as I do, because I have a second job. I have a full-time job, and I am a director of maintenance at a movie theater part-time.
Hmm.
And I try to impress on them, if they work hard now and don't start a family young, and worry about themselves. I said, when you get to be in your 50s like me, I said, maybe you guys can take it easy, and you don't have to work as hard as I do. And I'm not killing myself out here, but I work pretty hard.
Yeah.
So, I try to impress on them to work hard now, enjoy life, but work hard now so that you can, you know, have it easy when you get older. I put a lot of wear and tear on my body. And, like I said, I'm home. Today is my only full day where I'm
Right.
really home. And then, I got to spend time with my wife and we clean up. And before you know it, it's Monday and I'm back to work 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day. So, yeah, my
Yeah.
family, I'm living the dream now, so I can't tell you about too many hardships. I really haven't had like anything that was deeply distressing in my life, and those things that have been distressing were self-made. I did it to myself, you know
Yeah.
and sometimes you need someone to direct you in the right direction, and fortunately I got a village of that. So with that,
Well, good.
yeah,
Good. Typically, towards the end of the interview, I ask folks, what message would you like to leave with people? But I feel like that's the message.
yeah,
you know, family
yeah,
and taking care of one another.
and taking care of one another is something that you see now that we're not doing as a nation right now.
Hmm.
We're really not. We're watching in real time what I believe is the decline of a great nation. And so many of us are sitting back and watching it happen and saying nothing. I try to speak out. We're just regular guys. There's only but so much we can do. But I try to speak out against what I see that's wrong. Sometimes my brother tell me I need to shut my mouth and be quiet, but it's hard to just sit back and see something's messed up and
Hmm.
just not say anything, and hope that it's going to be okay some days, and you may have to go out and do something or get your hands dirty, or try to help your neighbor. And we're getting away from that, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I think as a country too, we've been around for 250 years. I feel like there's always a course correction at some point,
yeah,
regardless of what we think is going on. We'll see, right?
yeah, we would, yeah, yeah. No matter how it goes, and in
Right.
250 years, we're still young.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still young as a country. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I posed a question to him, and he couldn't answer it. I said, how many years in the 250 years has the United States seen peace? And when I told him 17 to 18 years, he couldn't believe it. I said, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I said, we either at war with each other or we're at war with other people, and it's unsustainable. And
Yeah.
so, we got to get ourselves together.
I would agree.
Yeah, yeah,
So, well, I appreciate you taking time out on a Sunday, your day off, to sit and talk with me today. I'm glad that we're able to share your story, and Cedric, it's a pleasure to finally sort of meet you face to face.
yeah, yeah. Same here. I appreciate it. I really do. So I can't wait to listen to this. I don't like listening to myself, but this was
Yeah.
this was exciting. I don't have the most exciting story. I'm quite sure you've interviewed people who've done it all, but it's been pretty interesting.
Thank you for watching and helping us honor the service and sacrifice of our nation's veterans. If you believe these stories matter, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this channel so more people can hear the voices of those who served. To learn more about Veterans Archives, watch additional stories, or find out how to record a veteran story, please visit our website at www.veteransarchives.org. And if you or a veteran you know needs support or resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org. Together, we can preserve these stories for generations to come.